In this video, I'm going to show you how to update materials from a Revit project that's been placed inside of Twinmotion. The first thing to understand is that materials are all connected with their like materials. So in other words, right here I've got a vertical siding on the wall. If I replace that vertical siding, I replace the vertical siding everywhere. There is a way to work around that, but by default, that's what's going to happen. Now in this case, let's pretend that I do want to swap out that material. And even though it's really not that bad, maybe I want to find something in Twinmotion. You know, maybe I'm in this project here where everything has to be swapped out, so you have no choice. Even if you liked it in Revit, you still have to swap it out. Okay, what you would do is go over to your material library, and just remember, if that's turned off, you can turn it on here. And then initially it will look like this. We'll go into materials and search for anything or find it in one of the categories. In this case, I'm going to look for siding. One thing I want to point out is that I did get some results here, but that's only because I wasn't inside of one of the categories. If I'm in glass, for example, and I search for siding, nothing will come up. You have to X out of that search and then go back to the broader library, and now I can do a search. Siding, it comes up, and this one isn't quite right for a vertical siding because you can see it overlaps. Each plank overlaps the next. This one might be okay. It's got these ridges on it that might make it look more like a batten board, so I'm going to go ahead and try that one. Okay, and what you would do is just simply click on it and then drag it into the scene, and you can see what it's going to replace right away. Everything just got updated. Okay, let's go up here where we can see this a little bit better in the sun, and you can tell that it's really small, too small. The fact that it's plastic isn't bad because vinyl siding is a type of plastic. I don't want this to be too shiny, but you can go through the settings, which are under properties. So here, let me just expand properties. And there are lots of settings in here that you can adjust to make it look the way that you want. And most of the time you won't have to. The most obvious one in this case is color. Let's go ahead and adjust to turn this white. Okay, and that's kind of gray, so I can turn up the brightness of it. And yeah, that's a better white now. Let's just click OK there. It is white. Good. When I was really close to it, it didn't look like white, but back here it looks okay. Here, I'm going to slow this down. I'm slowing my speed by using my number pad. I'm pushing the number 3 now to be able to get close to this without going through the wall. Okay, so I like that white. And one thing I'll just point out is that while I was here, if I pick a color that I actually like, whether it be, you know, something with pigment or just a white, all you need to do to keep that color, to keep track of it, is just click store right here. Here, let me pick a different one. I'll go store, and then it's going to keep track of that, and no matter what material I click on, I'll have access to my color palette. It's just a good thing to know. Okay, but let's go with the white. I'll click OK, and the color is now good, but what doesn't look quite right is the size of it. The spacing is way off. So if we just scroll down, or let's collapse the color and expand the UV, we've got a scale and rotation, both of which are going to be useful to us here. Now the first thing I like to do before I change the scale is click on world space or local space and see what that does. And you can tell already that it's making this a more relevant size to the environment. And you still might have to change it, that's okay, but it will get it closer. And now I'm going to change the rotation. I'm just going to plug in 90 for that. And sometimes that happens. I think I moved too fast. Okay, now let's back out, and that's really not too bad. It surprises me that it looks good because I think that the ridge is actually recessed and needs to be protruding, but you can't really tell from a distance. It tends to look just fine. Maybe the scale is still off just a bit though, isn't it? Okay, so there you go. I've got some siding, and it's straight out of my library here. I'm going to do the same thing over here on the roof, and you can see that we've got two different roof styles. So I've got a metal roof, and then here I've got a shingle roof, and that shingle doesn't look very good at all. if you want to see that material and its properties the way that it came over, you can actually select it, but that's where you have to go to the other material palette, which is really just a list of all the materials in your project. So over here is all the materials in the library, and over here is all the materials in your project, and you can edit them either way. If you get access to it from here, you still have access to the properties. Let's close this down and see if I can find, there it is, there's the shingle that came in, and I'd rather have a better one, so we'll look for shingle and search, and there is this one, which really isn't too bad, so we'll just do the same thing we did before. We apply that, and you can see that it is making the adjustment everywhere, and that it's once again too small. Let's try going to our UV, making that world space, and that's interesting because I don't want it to reorient, which means I'm not going to go with that world space option, which is fine because it really didn't make the size right. Anyways, it looked too big. Let's scale that up until it starts to look like shingles. Yeah, that's looking better. And you can add this little bit of grunge into the color, which if you go too far just makes it look terrible. But if you just add a little bit, it changes it up to the point where it doesn't look like repeated patterns all over the place. It gives it a little bit of inconsistency, which I think is a good thing. Okay, that looks good. And what if I had said, well, I've got a metal roof here, and I would also like a metal roof here. You know already that if I were to replace it, that it's going to replace everything. So the way that we work around that is when you have a material selected, and the reason I mention that is because the only way to access the tools I'm going to show is to have a material active. But it's this option right here. And it says that right now, by placing material, we replace the whole material instead of applying it to just an object. And if we were to apply it just to an object, then it would just get the top of that roof and nothing else. Okay, and then once again, if you're not in any kind of a material setting, let's just select an object here and get out of materials. You can see that those tools go away. They're only active while you have a material. It shows up. This one somehow changes how it is applied to any given object, and I haven't done enough with it to really speak intelligently about it. Okay, what about another scenario? What if we decide we would like to simply paint maybe the underside of a material or even the fascia? Okay, let's go into our library here and we'll go to materials, and let's just look for something white. Let's say that we want a white. Okay, car paint is not ideal here, but I'm just trying to go fast, so I think I'll do that. If you want just a plain white, actually the best thing to do, unless you already have one in your project, is to go to the library and find your primitives. Where are those primitives? Objects, and then primitives. And if you just place one, you're going to get just a material that's plain, and you can change its color however you want. So there we go. There's my white material. Okay, let's just say that I want to paint this, and I want to apply it just to the object so that it will only apply itself to the fascia. But you can see it's trying to do the fascia and the soffit. Now, in most cases, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that you might want that. But just in case you didn't want that, what you need to do is just go back into Revit. Let's find Revit here. And, what project am I in? This one. Okay. And then what you would do is paint the underside of the roof here with this tool. It's under Modify. This is the paint tool, and you can really paint it anything. Like, you don't need to paint it what you want it to be, because you can change it when you get into Twinmotion anyways. So if I were to just apply that here, and let's just go here, you can see this is a little bit tricky just because you've got to do it everywhere that you want it to be applied. And when that's done, you'll notice that now I should be able to just replace the underside. That didn't work yet. Let's see if I've got a sync or something. Let's go View, Twinmotion, Synchronize. Okay, let's try it now. And there you have it. Now it lets me just apply a material here, but not on the fascia. So that paint tool can be useful for any object where just part of it needs to have a unique color. Okay, I'm going to delete that out. And then the last thing I want to show you with materials, there's a lot to show really, but I think with the little bit that you've learned here, you can go experimenting and searching through the library and find what you need. But the glass that comes in from Revit, you can't even see through it at all. And you could go to its settings, and somewhere in here, here's the opacity. You can do something with that so that you actually see through it. Maybe an easier thing to do is just to get the glass that's already native here to Twinmotion, and it's in the materials glass settings. It's called clear glass. If you apply it once and you have the setting right, which would mean I need to go back to replace the entire material, then now I've got see-through glass everywhere. Oop, wrong button. At least I should. Yeah, now you can see that I'm able to look right through the glass into the home, and that's a much better glass. And then in another video I can show how to make that more reflective. I haven't found any good settings here that really turn up the reflectivity other than maybe the intensity here, but that increases reflectivity, decreases opacity. So we want to go with something better, and there is a tool within Twinmotion that will help us with that later. So there you go. That's a good start to using materials in Twinmotion.